Good morning. Well, this is a little bit different. Actually, it's good afternoon to you folks back east. We don't often come to you at this time on Wednesdays, but we're doing it for a number of reasons today because I want to tell you who to vote for in 2024. Let me tell you how this whole show came about. We actually had something else planned for this day, but what happened was, I'm a political junkie, so is my wife, and we just got going back and forth in this, and I said, you know what, there's some things I really want to say to the audience. And I felt the Lord speaking to me and say, there needs to be a voice of reason about all of this, and a reasonably educated voice of reason, because a lot of people out there, everybody's got a prophecy about who's going to win the election, of course. There are many voices of reason. I hope to be one today and help you find who you should vote for in 2024. Now, I'm going to give you some very direct things. You're going to see some shocking things. There's parts of what I'm going to show you today that's just going to blow your mind. Stuff that you probably don't have a clue about. So like and share and tell somebody about the show today. And of course, subscribe and hit that notification bell so that you will always be aware of what's going to be happening. And we're taking chats. We got some people already jumping in on that. Miguel, good to hear from you. Jesus is king, but nothing about Trump. Epic Gamer says something he is, and I don't know what the rest of it. Julie says, I will vote for Madame President. Whoa. Who's Madame President? I don't know. Is that Harris? Miguel says, be filled with the Holy Ghost. Elizabeth says, pray. Let's get on topic here. All right. Diane, thank you for moderating things out there. Blessings to Pastor Bob and all attending the live stream. Love learning from the expert. Well, I'll see if I'm an expert in a moment about all of this. Lucas and Diane in East Texas. I don't know. Epic Gamer says we're going to have to live with him eventually. Are you talking about Trump here? I don't know. Come on, let's get on topic. Rebounding with Cheryl says this is very important and I wish more pastors would talk about. Majin says, I vote Jesus. Well, that's nice, but Jesus isn't running as a Republican or a Democrat. Tree from Australia, good to hear from you. And Christian Brandon, thank you so much. And we'll see what else others have to say out there. So who should you vote for in 2024? Trump? Harris? You don't have RFK anymore? If you're not a Christian, what I'm about to say is not going to interest you as much. But if you are a Christian, I want to talk about the hot button issues that should concern you. A lot of it's not being talked about. Abortion, transgender surgery for minors, decency and character in the person that you choose, and perhaps one of the most important is the future of Christianity in America. So who will best stand for biblical values? A little later in the show, I'm going to list 10 important factors that followers of Jesus Christ should consider. And some of them may surprise you. Learn who to vote for in 2024. Hi, I'm Bob Larson. Millions around the world know me as the real exorcist. I've battled demons for 5 decades, and I'm going to share with you what I've learned about how demons and the devil seek to kill, steal, and destroy. And that happens even in the political arena. So big events coming up. I'm going to be in Phoenix very shortly. And then in Dallas, Texas, go to boblarson.org, click on seminars and find out all about it. I repeat, like and share so someone else can watch. And subscribe and hit that notification bell. Some of you aren't watching. You're maybe catching up on this later, but you're not watching it live and participating because you didn't know, because you didn't subscribe. And as always, please remember this ministry, reaching out to people all over the world. I did a conference with Mark Chase and the folks at Invicta down in Florida this last weekend. Hello, Mark, Jana, all the rest of you. Very gracious time that I had down there. But most people don't stop to think about the massive impact of this ministry. All the people that have been raised up in this huge room full of people. I asked for a show of hands. They're not part of our ministry. They were there for this other conference with Invicta Ministries, and almost every single person raised their hands. That they had been brought into the deliverance ministry through what God has allowed us to sow through the years. And we've been doing this for a long time, and we're still going to be doing it for a long time, God willing. But we've been faithful. We have taken the heat. We took it when there was nobody else there to take it with us. We were alone, out on the front lines, but that's what God called us to do. I need you to stand with us in this hour. I have to tell you, we've taken the biggest hit financially over the last couple of weeks that we've had the entire year. And if it had not been for one individual who shared a particularly generous gift, I might not even be able to be in front of this camera right now. So thanks to that person, thanks to you for sending generous tithes and offerings. And I'm about ready to teach you who to vote for. But first, vote for ex dunamis.
Well, I used to go to YouTube to watch deliverances and information. I would have to search for 20 hours on YouTube to find stuff. It gives an easier way to disciple other people in deliverance because you can get the information on one platform. Keep telling people, sign up. You're going to a platform built by the top exorcists in the world, and the guy with the most training, been to the most countries, has seen more than everybody else. He's the guru. The platform is on the guru.
Would you believe that there is a growing group of people out there who are Christians for Kamala? I'm going to come back to that in a moment and talk about these organizations being formed by evangelical Christians to elect Kamala Harris as president of these United States of America. Belinda, hello from Chicago. Well, hello to you too. And I think I got to this other one a moment ago. It's just a lot of people saying hello out there. Kim says, God will use Trump. It's the church leader's job to speak on political topics. Well, yes, it is, but there's an issue there. And technically, an individual such as myself is not allowed to make a public endorsement because of our nonprofit status as a church, and churches are not supposed to do it. Liberals have flaunted that for years, particularly in the South and the Black community. They've done what they wanted to do, and Democrats would come and speak at their pulpits constantly in private promotion, in contravention of what the rules are supposed to be. So things have gotten a little murky about that. And let me make it plain. I'm just going to talk about the issues that ought to be foremost in the minds of Christians, okay? Rebounding with Cheryl, Trump for the win. Willie, only vote Trump. Okay. And Tree says, we in Australia support our American friends supporting Trump. Oh, well, let's see if we got some Kamala folks out there, some evangelicals for Kamala. But Gene says, I'd never support Harris. Tom says, Trump. He knows we need God's help. Okay. Oh, Cheryl says the conference in Fort Lauderdale was great. Thank you for being there. Maria says, thank you for your sacrifice in the ministry. God bless you. Shihar says, Trump is the obvious choice. Miguel says, I have ex dunamis. God bless you and your family, Bob. Thank you so much. All right, we're going to get some more out there, and thank you so much for that kind gift, Tree. God bless you all the way from Australia. Let's jump right into this. When I said Christians for Kamala, that may have taken some of you by surprise, and you don't know what's going on out there. Christians for Kamala. Because most evangelicals are not for Kamala Harris. That's just a fact. So here we are, weeks away from the presidential election, and every single vote is critical. You must vote. The race is tight. Now we get the news that a group of evangelical Christians That's people who claim to be born again, claim to believe that the Bible is the infallible Word of God. This group is formed to defeat Trump and elect Harris. Now, honestly, I wish this were a joke, but it isn't. In the previous two elections, here's what happened. Born-again Christians provided a significant voting bloc and helped to elect Trump in 2016. No matter what other special interest groups thought, Trump always realized that he could depend on the conservative values of Bible believers to stand behind him because his views were closely aligned with them, in spite of his admitted checkered past and his very salty language. Franklin Graham at the Republican convention called him out on that. I call him out on that. It's not necessary. Just because you're a tough guy from New York doesn't mean you have to use four-letter words. But the thinking among some evangelicals is that he's changed and he now embraces faith to some extent, and the alternative is worse. But these voters who call themselves evangelicals for Harris are running ads. They're making calls to generate interest in voting for Kamala Harris. What are they thinking? I read an article where one evangelical pastor, Reverend Lee Scott, a Presbyterian, he went on record saying, I quote him, I am tired of watching, and he's talking about Trump here, okay? I am tired of watching meanness, bigotry, and recreational cruelty be the worldly witness of our faith. I want transformation, and transformation is risky business, okay? Polls show that about 60% of evangelicals have an unfavorable opinion of Harris. And frankly, I'd like to know, who are the Christians in that other 40%? Now, when it comes to evangelical Christians, it's about 80% for Trump. But some pro-life Christians are upset. Now that Trump seems to be waffling a little bit on the issue of abortion and IVF, these are hot-button issues for Christians. There's also another group called Vote Common Good, and it claims to be evangelical, and it's anti-Trump. And it's run by an admitted, is this not a contradiction in terms? A man who calls himself a progressive pastor. He says, and I quote him, political identity and religious identity are not a package deal. Oh, theoretically, okay. So these so-called evangelical groups against Trump, according to one news report that I read, are reaching out, and they pointed this out, Black Protestants, Catholics, Mormons, Jews, and Muslims. Could they swing the election in favor of Harris? Is that the Christian thing to do? Let me check out some chats. Straight into money, I vote Jesus. Oh, I think I got to those before. I think some of you are watching and listening to me now and you're not chatting, okay? Shahar says, good question. What are they thinking? And also says, so-called evangelical, so-called Christians. Well, okay, all right. Bride of Jesus says, Kamala is lotus for potus. Lotus for potus, okay. But in 1 Peter, there's something about the Simpsons. I don't know whether this is a joke or whether I'm not quite getting the whole text of everything. We'll get back to those chats in a moment. So let's take a second here, and let's look at 6 issues that really matter. Now, obviously, there are hundreds of issues that matter. But let's look at the ones that I think are the 6 most important issues that matter. The issues that should concern Bible-believing Christians. Number 1 on the list is abortion. Now, let's be honest here. It appears that neither candidate is going to give us, as born-again believers who believe life begins at conception, which is what I believe, it's not going to give us what we really want on the abortion issue. So what do? Do you settle for the position that's most close to the evangelical viewpoint? Or are you just digging your heels and vote for Harris, who has refused, and this was very clear in the debate, refused to state any limits at all on when an abortion should or should not be performed. She totally waffled on that. In fact, she just didn't even respond to Trump at that question in the debate. The second thing I think that is critically important, and this is a huge moral issue, and I do not understand why Christians are waffling on it, and they are failing to speak up on it, and that is legalized drugs and prostitution. I don't know if you know, but on several occasions, and this is not to knock Harris, this is just to state the facts, she has come out in favor of legalized prostitution. Is that a deal breaker? Now, I read an article yesterday in a major news feed, not a conservative news feed, by the way, that finally is bringing out the fact that she's been in favor of legalized prostitution. Until now, it's been a dead issue. Nobody has brought it up. But 2 months ago, I documented this in a blog entitled, Do You Favor Prostitution? And I encourage you, go back 2 months ago in July and check it out. Now, before I roll this, you will see me sitting in a car. I had just been in Canada for a seminar in Edmonton, and I'd learned, I think it's the day after, after we had our seminar there, that Biden had abdicated, and obviously Harris was going to be next. And so we were driving back, we're headed back to the United States, and I stopped in the middle of the Canadian Rockies, and I did a vlog. I'm not going to show you the whole vlog that I did then, but I raised some really important points. The rather restate them, I think it's best that we just roll this footage of what I said back in July. And I want to ask you a question. Do you approve of legalized prostitution? Even if it's euphemistically referred to as sex workers? Well, Kamala Harris is in favor of it. In fact, I had saved on my phone the transcript of a press conference, which she did back on July the 10th. And she was asked point blank, do you approve of legalized prostitution? And she said yes. In fact, she pointed out that 15 years ago as a DA, she approved of it and believed that prostitution should not be ever criminalized. So she said, I approve of the decriminalization of sex workers. But of course, we're talking about prostitutes. Well, what are the ramifications of that? Well, the governor of New York is seriously considering it. Chuck Schumer has come out in favor of it, as have many Democrats. I don't know if any Republicans have. Might be a good question to ask President Trump, ex-President Trump, that many think is going to be the next president, if he believes in it. But let's consider this for a moment. Legalizing prostitution. In fact, she went on to say she believed that all consensual sexual relationships should be legalized. Wait a minute. What about an 18-year-old girl who is a victim of incest of her father? Who's to say that's consensual or not? What about polyamory, where you have more than one person involved in a sexual relationship that many are now saying should be legalized? What about polygamy? What about bigamy? I mean, the list goes on and on. What is it that we agree should be consensual and non-consensual and criminalized or decriminalized? I will tell you point blank, I do not believe that prostitution should be decriminalized. The ramifications of this are horrifying in terms of the effect it would have upon marriages and homes. It's going to make prostitution just that much easier to acquire. And it's going to make the people who many times the prostitutes are sex workers who are living in very criminal or drug-addled conditions much more vulnerable to be exploited. This is a horrible position to take, in my opinion. But that's my opinion. And I would really be interested in knowing what you think about the next Democrat, presumably, who is going to be running for president, Kamala Harris, now that Biden has stepped aside, what you think about her position on decriminalizing prostitution. You've got to make a serious, very serious decision about whether you would vote for somebody who's in favor of legalized prostitution. I don't know where Trump stands on this. I don't know that he has addressed it yet. I haven't heard anything from his campaign about that. Let's wait and see what he says. Back to the chats. Shihar39 says, I'm writing these down. Good for you. Tom, this is interesting. Kamala in Hindu or Hindi, I guess what he means flower petal, like the lotus petal. Somebody put petal down there, petal in Hinduism, which, by the way, there's this myth about Brahma floating on a lotus petal, creating the world. So, okay, but we really don't know. We'll get more to the religious part of it in a moment. And Miguel says, Isaiah 5:20, woe to them that call evil good and good evil, that put darkness for light, light for darkness, that put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. Very apt scripture. Scott says, hey, I recall this video, Bob. I saw it. Scott says, oh, good grief, not Chuck Schumer. Yes, he has Chuck Schumer, basically the congressional leader of the Democratic Party. Now that Nancy is gone, for all practical purposes, he's calling the shots, and he is in favor of legalized prostitution. And I made my point there a moment ago, so we're not going to keep talking about that. But the other issue is the legalization of marijuana. Now, we know many states have legalized recreational medical marijuana, which is really kind of a joke. I mean, yes, there are a few people who do get it for medicinal purposes, but most that's just mostly a ruse to get around whatever federal laws are there. But Harris has come out playing for the legalization of recreational marijuana on a federal, national level. Are there enough weed-smoking Christians out there to be attracted to that? Who knows? The fourth issue is this: personal faith. Now, Harris, her mother, we would assume was Hindu, but we don't really know. She makes no profession of faith. There's never been an indication of a picture showing her going into any kind of a church for personal worship. I don't know if she's ever been in a church. Maybe. But it's certainly not something she talks about. Well, does that settle the issue? So her mother was Indian. Does that mean she was Muslim or Hindu? If she was Hindu, is she what I call a temple Hindu or a cultural Hindu? I mean, there's serious questions that for Christians we need to know. Are we making a person's individual faith a litmus test? Yes. For me, it's a litmus test. You make your own choice. But Kamala is not telling us how she was raised, if there was any spiritual input of any kind. Trump, for that matter, doesn't talk about it much. He does make reference to his mother, who was a very devout Christian. All right? But he doesn't appear to go to church. He's out golfing. So I don't know. So you're going to have to make a decision about who you think is more closely aligned with true evangelical Christianity. And the fifth issue is crime and illegal immigration. Oh, Kamala is coming here to Arizona on Friday to look at the border. Now she wants to come to the border. Yeah, she's running for president. Now she shows up at the border. One time, 4 years, she showed up. And she was the person in charge of it and couldn't even get on a private government plane and fly down here to just look at these millions of people coming into America illegally. This is, of course, a big issue. In Arizona, it's a crime issue. It's not just about illegal immigration. It's a crime issue. These syndicates are working right here in our city, in Phoenix, Arizona. And they are well organized. And there's the Venezuelan gangs and the Chilean gangs. And they walk into the United States of America and nobody stopped them. Okay. Well, that's something pretty serious. And I'm going to get to a point in a moment that you are not expecting me to talk about. All right? Let me see if there's some other chats out there. Teresa says, I thought she was the border czar. Well, she was. Now she says she wasn't. What? Okay. Scott says, we talked about Chuck Schumer. So the chats are slowing down because some of you out there are just watching. Now, let me talk about the sixth issue here, and let me word this very carefully. The war in Ukraine. Now, some of you know I've spent considerable time in Ukraine. Name a city in Ukraine. I have probably preached there, taught there. And for many, many years, about a dozen years, every year, I was a visiting professor of theology at the largest Bible college's seminary in that part of the world. And we had a television release of our teachings, which were filmed there on a major Christian satellite channel out of Ukraine to Russian-speaking people all across Europe and across Russia. I love the Ukrainian people. During the beginning of this war, I was there and raised money and gave some large sums of money to the cause of helping the pastors who were suffering. I could tell you some horrible stories. Very, very brave people there. But this thing is dragging on, destroying millions of lives. And I'm beginning to wonder, I'm just raising the question in terms of who you support. Are there some in Congress that they just don't mind this wag dog strategy? No, wag the dog. I don't even know what that means. There was a big movie about that. It means creating a diversion from the real damaging problem. And are some in Congress wagging the dog here? In other words, let's not talk about legalizing prostitution. Let's not talk about legalizing federally drugs. Let's not talk about abortion. Let's talk about Ukraine. I'm not so sure they really care about the people of Ukraine. I can't judge them. But there's more to this than you realize. Now, my heart goes out to the Ukrainian people. I love them. I feel a special closeness to them since I've ministered to so many thousands and tens of thousands of them over the years. I'd love to be back there now, but of course it's not safe, particularly because the seminary and Bible college is located just a few miles from where the fighting is taking place. But the person who is behind all of this, the person whom the United States is giving hundreds of billions of dollars to, is President Zelensky. And by the way, did you see? We just sent a bunch of bombs over to Ukraine to drop on the Russians. And there was a picture in the press of a politician. He was a Democrat, but I'm not sure that makes any difference. He was signing, like with a big felt tip pen, Putin's name on the bomb. It's like, you want to poke the bear? That's a good way to do it. So, who is Zelensky? I will guarantee you that 99 out of 100 Americans have no clue who this guy is. Who's in charge of winning the war? The man we're giving hundreds of billions of dollars to, of hard-earned American money, to fight the war. Now, I'm not dealing with the issue of whether it was important for the Ukrainians to take a stand and fight for their freedoms. I'm talking about the fact that after all these years later, and millions of people displaced and dying and injured, Where do we go now? Maybe it would be interesting for me to show you something that you probably don't even know exists. I know it exists because I've been to Ukraine. And you can find it on YouTube. I'm going to show you a short clip of what's on YouTube demonstrating who Zelensky was before he got elected president. And you might want to rethink what's going on. Who is Volodymyr Zelensky, president of the country? Now, I want to say before we show this, I'm not going to show you the whole clip. You can see the whole clip on YouTube. It's about 2.5 minutes long. I'm just going to show you a short clip of it. Young children should not watch what I'm about to show you. You get that? Young children should not see this. Get them out of the room. I'm going to show you what was shown on national television in Ukraine and around the world. This is the president of Ukraine coming here and begging us for massive sums of money to defend freedom in Western Europe. Really? Here's what you do. If you want to watch the whole clip later, just go to the search box in YouTube and type in Zelensky in drag. Watch this.
За волю, за долю, за правду. Будьмо гей, по першій, по другій, по третій. Будьмо гей, сам ти гей, за Юру, за Юлю, на долю. За Ляшка, ось моя булава, браття мої. Завтра йдемо танцювати проти москалів. Затанцюємо, мова, сила у нас є. Ще не вмерла Україна, поки крепко є. Борщ, сало, цибуля, хрін, сивуха, брага. П'ю, їм, я п'ю, я п'ю, я п'ю, я п'ю.
You really need to enroll in Bob Larson University. There's nothing like it. There are imitators. They do a good job, but not the in-depth critical teaching based on 5 decades of experience that we have to offer you in Bob Larson University. Personally, I think you ought to enroll in Bob Larson University if you find other schools out there that are doing a good job of teaching in certain topics. By all means, build your database, your information base. Now, I want to give you some final thoughts in a moment. Just before I do, I want to check out some chats here. Annie says, is it okay to vote for someone who is a Freemason? I'm going to address that in a moment. Not specifically, but that conundrum. Will it open the door to something if you vote for someone who is into a pagan religion? Yes. So if you know, in my opinion, now this is a personal opinion, if you know a candidate at any level of government who is into the occult or the New Age or pagan religious systems, I wouldn't vote for them unless the other guy was dancing with Zelensky in the video or something, okay? I mean, there are difficult choices that need to be made. David says, it looks like the toddlers found mommy's closet, whatever that is. Scott says, I saw this, disgusting. Daniel says, brother, that was sick. Scott says, you can see the demons in their faces. St. Paul, don't drag people's past up because I'm sure everybody's got a past. Yes. I don't know. Have you been a drag dancer? I haven't. Come on, there are extremes here. We all have sinned to come short of the glory of God, but then there is over-the-top evil. Belinda, what were they singing about? I don't know. They were singing in Ukrainian. I have no idea. Tree says, wow, I didn't know that about Zelensky. Very few people did. I think it was just time somebody needed to know that. Now, I'm not stating policy with regards to Ukraine and what's going on there, but this war's got to stop. Because I'm not sure there were wonderful, patriotic Ukrainians who are enduring the most incredible circumstances on behalf of their country. I was there after what they call the Maidan, where they threw out the puppet leader in the country that was put up there by Putin. And there was this uprising, as it was known. And I was there. And right after that fight, that mini war was over, and it was horrible, but these are incredibly brave people. But there's a bigger picture here, okay? Annie, I trust your opinion. Well, thank you. David, a bit behind on the conspiracy theories. That's already public knowledge. No, I don't think it is public knowledge. I think if we took a vote of this audience, we'd find that very few people, very small percentage of people are even aware of what I just showed you. That's my opinion. Miguel, is that even a real video? Yes, it is a real video shown on national television in Ukraine. Diane, I don't know what that is. Renee, whoever believes in God's word, Trump is for life. Well, he's, on an evangelical scale, perhaps he's more than Kamala is, but, you're going to have to make a decision there. We'll talk about that, okay? Oh my, Zelensky, I never knew. Renee, warrior, requires courage to stand for the truth. Well, thank you all for joining this chat. Let me jump into my final thoughts here, all right? I want to give you 10 things to think about, and I'm going to go through these really quickly. Number one, your vote may be the lesser of two evils. As Christians, sometimes we have to choose who has the position nearest to us, and it may be the lesser of two evils. Interestingly enough, Pope Francis, just a week or so ago, addressed this. They asked him, well, what should the American public do? And this is the words of Pope Francis. One must choose the lesser of two evils. Who is the lesser of two evils? That lady or that gentleman? So the pontiff had just come back from a tour of Southeast Asia, and they asked him, and then he said, everyone with a conscience should think about this and do it. That's pretty wishy-washy, but at least he said something about it, and I think that's what we've got here, the lesser of two evils. Secondly, character, the character issue. Let's understand something. We're not voting for character, but for policies. I wish we could have both good character and good policies, but frankly, neither candidate is a declared practicing born-again Christian. So if that's your standard, you don't have it with either one of them. But what is the character? And in reference to the chat a moment ago, we know Trump has a past. Kamala has a past. You need to factor that in to your vote. I believe it's important because character does determine policy to a large extent. Number three, abortion limitations. You have to decide what is a moral hill to die on and what is a political preference. For example, fracking might be a preference, but post-birth abortion, and there has been talk about that, and Trump brought it up in the debate, that's an abominable evil to oppose, no matter what the political nuances are. That's my opinion. Fourth thing to consider is the favorability to Christians. Who has the most favorable disposition to evangelicals? Who's inclined to be more closely aligned with our concerns about crime, constitutional government, and respect for faith in public life? 5, personal morality. What character issues should concern us? Foul language or foul policies? Both candidates are on record, we've heard them, using 4-letter words. Just a clip of Kamala the other day, using the F word. We know that Trump has used it. So we have to, not focus on potty mouths, but to look at character traits that we think are inappropriate. And, it's the nature of politicians to change positions to fit the audience. But when are those actions pandering and when is it lying? Number 6, traditional values. Who will best restore respect for what we call traditional values, which are often the same as biblical values, or at least Judeo-Christian values? Who currently most follows Christian behavior? Frankly, I'm going to say a personal opinion. I don't think it's someone who asked Megan Thee Stallion on stage to twerk before speaking. You can disagree, but that kind of made it for me. Number 7, military security. Have you ever asked yourself the question before you vote? Who will our enemies fear the most? As Christians, we want a militarily stable country to ensure our freedoms to worship and prevent the suffering of wars. Who might goad Putin or Kim Jong-un into a world war? Number 8, who has a Christian background? Well, in this particular case, as I've already cited, we don't really know. So who comes from the most biblically inclined background, whether or not they're currently practicing their family-induced spiritual values? We don't know what they were with Kamala. We know something about Trump, at least his mother. So who at least makes the claim of having some Christian background? You need to know the answer to that. Do your research. Number 8, who's most friendly to Judeo-Christian traditions? Who has proven to be the most amicable to Jewish and Christian values that founded this country? The so-called Abrahamic faith values. Now, they may not practice them now, but think about this. Here's the issue. Who's most likely to put people on the Supreme Court that will reflect traditional values? If you look at Biden and Trump, I think the answer is obvious. It's very obvious, but that's up for you to decide. Number 10, pray. Pray you will make the right choice. Have you genuinely prayed about who you should vote for? Voting is one of the most sacred duties of a citizen. Paul talked about it. Many scriptures I could quote. He instructed Christians at a time when they lived under the control of the Roman Empire, one of the most brutal and oppressive political regimes in history. Peter wrote about it. Peter said in 1 Peter 2:17, honor all people, love the brotherhood, fear God, honor the king. 1 Peter 2:13 through 15 adds, therefore submit yourselves to every ordinance of man for the Lord's sake, whether to the king as supreme, or to governors as to those who are sent by him for the punishment of evildoers, and for the praise of those who do good, for this is the will of God. How does that fit into your vote? Good citizens are good Christians. and good Christians are good citizens. Now, not everybody who votes is a Christian. And what I've tried to do is indicate to you what born-again Christians, because that's my immediate constituency I'm concerned about, what they should do. But some of you out there may not be an evangelical Christian, but you're an individual of traditional values and moral character. Well, you still want to be a good citizen, and you want to treasure the God-given right to participate in the political process. Do it. So go and do it on November the 5th. So much to be said. Share. Like this with somebody that you care about. Let other people know what you've watched and heard today. And thank you for supporting a ministry that takes the time and effort to really lay things out in a cogent manner, that tries to take a look at things to help the body of Christ make decisions. I can't make a decision for you. I'm not telling you what my decision is. I'm not even allowed to do that. And if allowed to, I'm not sure that I would, because I'm not an advocate for anything except decency, morality, a stable government, freedom to worship, and the right in the public square to lift up the name of the Lord Jesus Christ as the hope of the world. Thank you for watching. Next Wednesday night, be sure to be watching at a normal time for a very fascinating discussion of something that you also probably don't know about. See you in Phoenix. See you in Dallas. Why don't you go to boblawson.org, click on Donate, and share a gift with this ministry. Thank you to those of you who did. Thank you to the chats. I wish I could have gotten to more of them. So many good comments out there. I appreciate your watching today, and always remember, in the political process, in the congressional arena, in everyday life on the job, in your home with your family, wherever you may be, all of us need to completely surrender our lives to Jesus Christ. Get delivered and get free, stay free, and live free.
Your financial support and prayers make it possible for us to bring hope for the hurting and freedom to those in spirit. For the latest ministry, go to .org or call 303-980-1511.